In this lesson, you'll learn useful business English for contracts, legal review, and business agreements. Let's begin. Phrase 1. Review the terms. Review the terms. Meaning, to examine the conditions and requirements contained in an agreement. Example, our legal team will review the terms before we send the contract to the supplier. Contract terms can cover price, delivery, responsibility, confidentiality, and many other obligations. Reviewing them means checking whether they are clear, acceptable, and consistent with the business arrangement. Use this phrase before approval or signature. Now repeat. Review the terms. Phrase 2. Enter into an agreement. Enter into an agreement. Meaning, to formally accept and become legally bound by an agreement. Example, the two companies entered into an agreement to develop the product jointly. This formal phrase describes the creation of a binding relationship between parties. It is common in contracts, announcements, and legal communication. Use it when the agreement has been accepted, not while the parties are still discussing possible terms. Now repeat. Enter into an agreement. Phrase 3. Negotiate a clause. Negotiate a clause. Meaning, to discuss and agree on the wording of a specific contract provision. Example, we need to negotiate the clause concerning ownership of the project data. A clause is one particular section of a contract. Negotiating it may involve changing its language, scope, conditions, or exceptions. Use this phrase when most of an agreement is acceptable, but one provision still requires discussion. Now repeat. Negotiate a clause. Phrase 4. Define the scope of work. Define the scope of work. Meaning, to clearly describe the services, tasks, and results included in a contract. Example, the project schedule cannot be finalized until we define the scope of work. A clear scope explains what will be delivered, by whom, and sometimes what is specifically excluded. It reduces disagreement about expectations and additional work. Use this phrase when preparing a service contract, project agreement, or supplier statement of work. Now repeat. Define the scope of work. Phrase 5. Meet a contractual obligation. Meet a contractual obligation. Meaning, to perform a duty that an agreement legally requires. Example, the vendor added extra staff to meet its contractual obligation before the deadline. Contractual obligations may include payment, delivery, reporting, quality, or confidentiality. Meeting one means completing the required action according to the agreed conditions. Use this phrase when checking performance or explaining why a party must take a specific action. Now repeat. Meet a contractual obligation. Phrase 6. Obtain legal approval. Obtain legal approval. Meaning, to receive formal permission from the legal team before proceeding. Example, we must obtain legal approval before using the customer's logo in the announcement. Legal approval helps confirm that a proposed contract, message, or business action is acceptable from a legal perspective. It may include conditions or required changes. Use this phrase when legal review is a mandatory step in an internal process. Now repeat. Obtain legal approval. Phrase 7. Amend the contract. Amend the contract. Meaning, to formally change part of an existing contract. Example: both parties agreed to amend the contract and extend the implementation period. An amendment changes agreed terms without replacing the entire contract. It should clearly identify the original agreement and the sections being modified. Use this phrase when business circumstances change after a contract has already been signed. Now repeat, amend the contract. Phrase 8. Renew the agreement. Renew the agreement. Meaning, to continue an agreement for another period after its current term. Example: the client plans to renew the agreement for an additional 2 years. Renewal may happen automatically or require a new decision and updated terms. The parties often review price, performance, and future requirements first. Use this phrase when an existing business relationship is approaching its contractual end date. Now repeat, renew the agreement. Phrase 9. Terminate the contract. Terminate the contract. Meaning, to formally end a contract before or at its agreed completion point. Example: the company may terminate the contract if the provider repeatedly misses service levels. Termination must follow the conditions stated in the agreement, such as notice periods or specific reasons. It can create financial and operational consequences. Use this phrase when discussing the formal end of contractual rights and responsibilities. Now repeat, terminate the contract. Phrase 10. Resolve a dispute. Resolve a dispute. Meaning, to settle a serious disagreement between parties. Example: the account directors met privately to resolve the dispute without legal proceedings. A dispute may concern payment, performance, interpretation, or responsibility. Resolution can come through direct negotiation, mediation, arbitration, or court action. Use this phrase when the goal is to reach an accepted solution and allow the parties to move forward. Now repeat, resolve a dispute. Phrase 11. Limit liability. Limit liability. Meaning, to restrict the amount or type of legal responsibility a party may have. Example: the supplier proposed new language to limit its liability for indirect losses. Liability clauses allocate financial and legal risk between parties. Limits may apply to certain losses or set a maximum amount. Use this phrase when discussing how a contract controls the possible consequences of failure, damage, or claims. Now repeat, limit liability. Phrase 12. Sign on behalf of the company. Sign on behalf of the company. Meaning, to sign an agreement as an authorized representative of an organization. Example: only designated officers may sign on behalf of the company for contracts above this value. A signature can legally bind the organization, so the signer must have appropriate authority. Internal rules may depend on contract type or value. Use this phrase when confirming who is permitted to execute an agreement for the business. Now repeat, sign on behalf of the company. Excellent work. You have practiced 12 expressions for contracts and legal review. Choose 3 phrases and use each one in a sentence about a realistic business agreement. Following a contract from review through renewal or termination will help you remember the language. Continue with the next part for more business English speaking practice.